Close your eyes and picture yourself in a time when you are a teenager and you are in the midst of completing yet another full year of school. You are a very social butterfly to everyone around you, and you happily went out almost every week to the park with your very close group of friends. But then all of a sudden, everything gets taken away from you, and the whole world shuts down, and you get quarantined in your home for quite a while, maybe a couple months, all because of a virus. Now, this may be my attention getter, but this is real life. Yes, this happened to everyone around the world. It happened globally. But today I'll be sharing with you guys how this took the largest toll on teenagers' mental health with some of the many actions you can take to make it better. To set a foot forward, the first thing I want to touch bases on is the outcomes of the sudden isolation through quarantining for COVID. It is so serious that it led to emotional isolation in some cases, depression, and worsened anxiety, and even create anxiety in those who didn't even think they had it. In the article, The Risks of Isolation, Ms. Novotny had shared some of the research she has, and basically putting it into perspective, the teenagers went to school every day, 5 days a week, and were surrounded by people always, and then all of a sudden get stuck in quarantine. This environment, although you have immediate family, can get lonely. And as a teenager, how they put it out on social media was boring. However, it is much more worse than boring, because when alone in such a difficult time like this one, you're having to face issues that swirl around your head and give you constant intrusive thoughts and worry, which can lead to emotional isolation and a buildup of anxiety. Especially when being a teenager and having all the teenage drama, the majority of teenagers do not go to their parents for advice or help and end up having to deal with these things alone, because when they had their friends, they would go talk about it and get over it, but now they can't have that communication aspect because they're all alone in their homes. With all this anxiety and depression and all the mental issues that are evolving rapidly due to having to abruptly change and adapt to these drastic changes with no heads up, it brought a lot of distress, and all of these mental issues that affected the teenagers' mental health potentially grew into a physical issue as well. A quick example with one was that leading to forgetting some of the basic needs that can be presented in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which could be how some teenagers began worry eating and excessive eating and eating when there was nothing other than eating to do, just to fill in this void and this emptiness inside of them. And very much happened vice versa, forgetting meals and moving on and not eating enough, not keeping hydrated, because some of the teenagers were so focused on some of the less important issues rather than focus on keeping themselves healthy. Depression can lead to much more drastic and even deadlier issues than that, which can be talked about in a different time. But in general, loneliness and intrusive thoughts create in teenagers a hormonal imbalance that can basically give a feeling of being numb and lonely, and they lose interest in keeping connections with the friends and family, and not eat for periods of time, or eat unhealthily eating and other unhealthy, unwanted habits. Social media on the phone also plays a huge role with this problem. Teenagers spend a lot of time on their phones, and with the average life now being stuck at home, those numbers went up drastically. I actually did a sample t-test proportion project on how much time students spend on social media in my statistics class with my favorite professor, F.R. Grosha, such an amazing professor. And my results were honestly mind-blowing, because the source I used was an article called Average Time Spent Daily on Social Media, and it basically says that it roughly is averagely 2 hours and 24 minutes spent on social media. However, my sample t-test proportion, I asked 30 to 35 students how much time do they spend, and my came up to 5 hours and 45 minutes. And so this survey was done before quarantine even happened and corona even existed. So now imagine how high those numbers are being stuck at home for most of the time. With this time being spent on social media, and it just bombards the teenagers with all of these twisted news, and ultimately creates just a mental block in the teenager's mind and pushes them away from reality, and which is scary and can cause anxiety, depression, much more, like I've mentioned previously. And with the buildup of emotions and feelings from being alone, can lead to cyberbullying online and wanting to voice your opinion about some of the things that are going on right now, and then having others voice their opinions, and then all of a sudden you guys don't agree with each other, and you end up getting turned down for your opinions, emotions, and it's all a consistent loop of this buildup of distress that's so hurtful to the mind and the body. Now, all this trouble caused by the virus, what can we do to make it better? How can it get better? Another article that I was able to read was called Challenges and Opportunities During the Outbreak. And it gave lots of advice of things that you can do to make it better. The first thing listed was to create a schedule. They say it takes about 3 days to make a habit, so after 3 days you won't be dragging yourself around about trying to keep up consistently with your schedule. But setting a bedtime and a set time to wake up and go to sleep can result in a consistent night pattern, which can be healthy for your brain and for resting and for growing personally, physically, and everything in every proportion. After setting a sleep schedule, you set up a eating schedule so that way you can eat consistently, breakfast, lunch, dinner, everything, all consistent throughout your day. And snacks are great. Snacks are amazing. So you can develop a healthy, timely manner. Including a downtime for your electronics, because with social media it honestly creates too much stress to the mind and the body. In your downtime, you can turn it in to having a fun time, fun conversation talk with your parents, with your siblings, and talk about fun topics that you are fun to discuss, like astrology or dinosaurs or whatever you want to call it. Another big one was, the article stated, was to stay active and doing activities that you would usually do, like meditation or yoga, because sometimes these intrusive thoughts can get very overwhelming. Now, throughout this speech, I discussed some of the main things that COVID brought upon teenagers and some of the ways to cope. It greatly affected teenagers group more than others. However, that does not mean it didn't take a large toll on yourself. So use some of these practice and healthy habits and create some for your own, because you matter and we are all going to overcome this difficult time. You are never alone and you are very much loved. You can always reach out to me if you want someone to unwind with or talk about any issues, and if not, there are plenty of resources out there that Valencia offers as well. So use those. Thank you so much for tuning in. It was a pleasure speaking to you.